After arriving at Treblinka, the victims were stripped of everything: their luggage, their clothes, their valuables, and for the women, even their hair. Now they stood, beaten, terrified, and naked in the middle of the camp yard. Then came the order: move forward, and so began the final journey, the one that would take even the last thing they had, their lives. In front of them stood the Schlauch, the tube, the worst place in the camp, perhaps in human history. It was a narrow passage, fenced with barbed wire on both sides. Pine branches were woven into the wire, so no one could see in or out. The path was curved. No one could see what waited at the end. It was the gas chambers. But the victims had no time to think. The guards drove them forward with brutal force. One survivor described it this way: on the path to the gas chambers, Germans stood on both sides of the fence with dogs. They carried whips and iron rods, forcing the people to run and push forward, shouting, "Faster, faster! The water is getting cold! Others are waiting for the showers!" Women's screams could be heard across the camp. Under a rain of blows, the victims stumbled forward. The stronger ones hid deeper in the crowd, trying to avoid the beatings. The weakest were pushed to the edges, exposed to the SS men and their dogs. According to later testimony from SS men, it was always the men who were gassed first. Women and children had to wait in the tube, sometimes for over half an hour, until the chambers were ready again. They heard the diesel engine. Its fumes were the killing method. And they heard the voices of their fathers and husbands dying inside. All of this happened even in winter. One prisoner recalled, all through that winter, small children, stark naked and barefoot, had to stand out in the open for hours on end, waiting their turn in the increasingly busy gas chambers. The soles of their feet froze and stuck to the icy ground. They stood and cried. Some of them froze to death. Meanwhile, Germans and Ukrainians walked up and down the ranks, beating and kicking the victims. Only when the chambers were emptied were the victims allowed to continue. By that point, they knew exactly what awaited them, and in such moments people lose control of their bodies. When it was over, a special group of prisoners scattered a fresh layer of sand to cover the excrements left behind. It's worth noting that in the Schlauch, it didn't matter anymore where you came from. Those from Western Europe, Germany, Belgium, Czechoslovakia, were still treated relatively mildly during the unloading and undressing. They were used to more humane conditions back home. If the Germans had started beating them immediately, they might have realized it was all a trap and resisted. But inside the Schlauch, none of that mattered anymore. The Germans already had them, naked, terrified, and locked inside a closed-off corridor. Now they could do whatever they wanted. All this was no coincidence. The Germans had learned from their earlier death camps, Belzec and Sobibor. They experimented there. In Treblinka, they perfected the system. There was also a Schlauch in Belzec, but it was straight. In Treblinka, the path was curved on purpose, so that the victims couldn't see too far ahead, couldn't see what waited at the end. Treblinka had been designed for maximum efficiency, and it was effective. Day after day, month after month, hundreds of thousands of people walked through that path, and when they finally reached the gas chambers, something even worse awaited them. A Ukrainian guard known as Ivan the Terrible. His crimes, and the next step in the killing machine, will be the subject of the next video.